wonderful time in the Christian calendar. At least I love it. Perhaps just that's me, but I love Epiphany. We are linked to light that reveals what was hidden that needed to be revealed, what was not yet that needed to be revealed, and all of this suddenly appears. On Thursday of this past week, the 6th of January, we celebrated Epiphany. I don't know how you celebrated it, but we had space to celebrate. The wise men had followed a star, and it was a star which revealed a promise in the Old Testament that it was being fulfilled. So it was a shining star of light that spoke about promise which was to be fulfilled. The star promised a newborn king, and so its light, in that light, they traveled until the child was revealed to them. That must have been an exciting thing. I mean, we take that story kind of, it happens every year. We see the figures, but it must have been a dynamic moment for all of these wonderful men who were looking in the sky for years, seeing the star and then following it and finding what the star revealed. They saw what had been revealed. The star pointed to a promise, and that was hidden until they arrived and entered the house and saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshiped him. Light revealed. That's Epiphany. And John begins his gospel with many rays of light. And I would like to read John chapter 1, verse 5 through 18. John 1, verses 5 through 18. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness can never extinguish it. I think that in itself is a marvelous verse for us tonight. God sent a man, John the Baptist, to tell about the light, so that everyone might believe because of his testimony. John himself was not the light. He was simply a witness to tell about the light. The one who is the true light, who gives light to everyone, was coming into the world. He came into the world he created, but the world didn't recognize him. He came to his own people, and even they rejected him. But to all who believed him and accepted him, he gave the right to become children of God. They are reborn, not with a physical birth resulting from human passion or plan, but a birth that comes from God. So the Word became human and made his home among us. He was full of unfailing love and faithfulness, and we have seen his glory, the glory of the Father's one and only Son. John testified about him when he shouted to the crowds, "This is the one I was talking about when I said, 'Someone is coming after me, who is far greater than I am, for he existed long before me.' From his abundance we have all received one gracious blessing after another. For the law was given through Moses, but God's unfailing love and faithfulness came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God, but the unique one, who is himself God, is near to the Father's heart. He has revealed God to us." The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness can never extinguish it. Then, apart from a star, there was a man sent to tell about the light. He was not the light. I think it's interesting, this whole dynamic of light. John says, "I'm not the light." But he was sent to talk about the light. He was simply a witness to tell about the light. The one who is the true light, who gives light to everyone, was coming into the world. That in itself is dynamic, to think that the light of Christ shines into everyone who comes into the world. That gives us hope, you see, when we talk with people. If the light of Christ has already been shining on them or in them, then we have a possibility of talking with them. John was a messenger of light. How wonderful that sounds when we see so much darkness. I was thinking, if we needed a tip for 2022 in these dark days, wouldn't it be to testify to the light? The light that has come into the world? To perhaps be persons to talk about that light? That's a tip for us. Tell about the light. I think that sounds so positive when we look at all of the news and even the dark outside right now, to talk about light. Now, I'm not very good at physics. In fact, I was able to squiggle out of taking physics. That was I was a sneaky thing as a student. I figured out a way to get around physics. Now, I'm not sure that was a good call on my part, but it managed to get me off the hook. But being rather simple in these matters, I nonetheless know that when I plug an electrical cord into an electrical socket and have a light bulb attached to it, the light goes on. That has been the delight of this season of the year, even as we see this Christmas tree still shining next to me, probably for the last Sunday, I presume. Lights sparkle here and there because someone connected the light to a power source. That doesn't take much brilliance to do that, but it's beautiful when you do. The laws of physics are not needed in order to be able to plug in an electrical cord. I'm glad that I don't have to pass an exam on the physical aspects of light and understand Einstein's formula about light in order to enjoy the light. John describes the Word, Jesus, the light that arrived, as making his home among us. And two qualities or two streams of light are expressed as particularly characteristic of Jesus. And John writes them down twice. He was full of unfailing love and faithfulness. Unfailing love and faithfulness. And John repeats the phrase again. He said, for the law was given through Moses, but God's unfailing love and faithfulness came through Jesus Christ. The law was given through Moses, and we know how laws work, don't we? Well, at least they're supposed to work this way. They order behavior in the society. And they serve out punishment when people don't obey the law. And sometimes laws can be executed without heart. We can try to make people stay within society's demands. And we often hear politicians say, even within the last year, we've heard them say, lawbreakers will feel the full weight of the state under the rule of law. That always sounds good. And I'm really glad that we live in an orderly society and for laws that work. But Mosaic law, to remind us, did not and was not adequate enough to reveal God. Do we understand that? The law in itself was not able to really help us to reveal God to us. It could hold people responsible to God, but could not reveal who God really was. Just like a list of laws does not describe the beauty of a society that functions well together. I mean, when I think of society, I don't think of all the laws everybody needs to obey. Do you? When I think of society, I think of the beautiful things that hold us together, or the community of which we are a part. I don't think of all the laws first thing. It's not correct in that sense that matters. When we talk about getting to know Jesus, it's not being correct, but connecting that matters. Not correct, but connect. Jesus reveals the qualities about God that the law was inadequate to reveal. Unfailing love and faithfulness. And both of those qualities can be felt, not legislated. Can you legislate unfailing love? It would be like saying in a marriage that you could say the law says, since you took your marriage off, the law says you must love your wife. Does that work? Love has to be felt. It's quality that we feel. It's not just something that can be legislated. Neither is faithfulness able to be legislated. They're relational elements. Not written down in a book of law, although you could list off what things mean, but in the words that I read before, and I've mentioned them even before to all of you, or in my newsletter at least, the birth of Christ in us is what matters. And we find here the key for connecting when we think of unfailing love and faithfulness. Paul later shares with the Colossians that God wanted everyone to know the riches and glory found in Christ. He says, this is the secret. Okay, this is the secret of knowing the riches and glory of God. Christ lives in you. This gives you assurance of sharing his glory. Christ in you, the hope of glory. The birth of Christ in us, that is the time, the arrival of the Christ child, not in the manger, but in the inner room of our hearts as we open the door to him. The light comes in to lighten and brighten up our inner lives, our inner selves, the innermost heart chamber that we have tucked inside of us, where sometimes darkness can reside, and the light needs to go in to brighten that inner spot in us. 1 John 5:12 says, whoever has the Son has life. Whoever does not have God's Son does not have light and does not have life. Evelyn Underhill, who's long been gone to be with the Lord, writes this: the birth of Christ in our souls is for a purpose beyond ourselves. It is because his manifestation in the world must be through us. Every Christian is, as it were, part of the dust-laden air which shall radiate the glowing epiphany of God, catch and reflect his golden light. You are the light of the world, but only because you are enkindled, made radiant by the one light of the world. And being kindled, we have got to get on with it. Be useful. As Christ said in one of his ironical flashes, do not light a candle in order to stick it under the bed. We are here after we've received the light. It's not just to make our inner self warm and cozy, but to let out light in this world. And that text before was 1 John 5:12. Perhaps born in us might be less understandable than if we use the phrase allowing connection to take place. Or as Richard Rohr says, it is like a free wireless connection. That speaks maybe to this current generation. Free wireless. All we have to do is connect. Again, it's not getting things correct to know Jesus. And I think this is freeing. Many people think they have to live up to a whole bunch of standards first before they can get to know Jesus. Like if you have all these lists of things that you do right, then you get permission to know Jesus. That is just wrong. It's just wrong. We don't have to get things correct first to get to know Jesus. It's by getting ourselves to connect with Jesus that matters. Connecting is more understandable when we consider these two relational qualities about Jesus, which tells us about God. He was full of unfailing love. Jesus was not full of himself. You never see him inflating his own PR or arrogantly strutting around the human stage. That's not Jesus. No, he was full of a God quality of love, a self-giving kind of love. He did not grasp things for himself, but gave away almost everything that he had for others. I've been reading a book about Mother Teresa, and it's fun, this book, to read, because she's an amazing little personality, actually. Historically amazing to me. She repeatedly said that everything small can be done with great love. I find that amazing in itself. We could talk about that a long time. Or she talked too about the sense of being a pencil in the hand of God to write. I think that's an imagery too that helps us to understand about what it means to follow Jesus. Wherever she and her sisters went, they always cleaned everything up. That was the first thing they did. She arranged certain things, but then right away they started cleaning everything. There's a story about they made a trip to Armenia back in when there was an earthquake and a lot of trouble. And the first thing they did in a hospital was clean everything up that hadn't been cleaned up for 3 years. And the people who went by saw them cleaning, and you don't have to say much if you're cleaning everything up. What does that mean? Something is coming to town. Something different is happening. We could say, in connection with our story here, light was coming into darkness. Cleaning something up brings brightness, lightness, she would say holiness. And you know what she cleaned the most? Herself, personally? Toilets. She said, I am a specialist, probably the world's best specialist in cleaning toilets. And everything was to be done with cheerfulness. Now, isn't that contagious? I haven't met many people who clean toilets cheerfully. Usually we think that's the last thing on earth we ever want to do. Well, she would take that as her assignment. I think there's something amazing about somebody who got all kinds of doctorate degrees, all kinds of degrees given to her, all kinds of awards given to her. She put them in cartons in her room and never paid any attention to them. Never paid any attention to them. I find that amazing too. But she told her Sisters of Mercy to always do everything with cheerfulness, including cleaning the toilets. Jesus had a love, and that's why I'm using that illustration, which people felt. When he talked with people, they felt he loved them. When he walked with people, they felt he loved them. When he broke bread with them, the people felt he loved them. And when he simply lived with them, made their home with them, like John says, they felt his love. And John says we saw his glory. Now, that means what Jesus was felt and seen. And you know what? That helps us to connect to that kind of love. Jesus' love is consistent, not here today, gone tomorrow. Not like telephone connections which can break off, and there's been a variety of people who had telephone problems at the beginning of this year. No, it's unfailing connection, always there. He He does not fail us. He does not disappoint us. Unlike many of the experiences we have with people who say they love us, only do we find out later that love is fragile. Jesus' love is solid as a rock. Connecting to that unfailing love warms up our inner lives. We have someone who always loves us. Always. Always unconditional love. We don't have to earn it. We can't buy it. It's given if we receive it. The dark cold of life can be brightened when Jesus' love enters our inner beings, the very core of who we are. And the second quality which helps to secure our connection to Jesus is his faithfulness. Faithfulness. Now we know sometimes that laws can be applied arbitrarily. A whim from a judge can sentence some people to jail, and on the other hand, set some people free. Laws can be used variously depending on how you interpret them. And for some it means condemnation, and for another liberation, and sometimes it depends on who interprets it. What does it mean when it was written down? So it can be very inconsistent, laws can be. And that raises questions in many people's minds about the legitimacy of all of this. But I want to say clearly to all of us, in Jesus we find a solid alternative to whimsy. It's faithfulness. It's a solid presence. His words are true. They don't change on a whim and are not corrupted by favoritism. We know from human relationships that when we find people who are consistent, dependable, and loyal, those kinds of people are attractive to us. Why? Because that makes good qualities for relationship. Consistency, dependability, and a degree of loyalty. When we enter a relationship with people like that, we know that they won't stab us in the back. But you know something else? Jesus takes the stabs that life gives us to us on his back. And that is how reliable and dependable Jesus is. This introduction to John's Gospel was probably added on later. You know, you almost think like John wrote the rest of his Gospel, and then after thinking about it all, went back to the beginning and wrote the prologue. Why? Because he says, out of his own experience with Jesus, he says, from his abundance, we have all received one gracious blessing after another. When we connect with Jesus, we receive grace, and that's this free, wireless connection. It doesn't cost us anything, and that's the meaning of grace. It doesn't cost us anything. It's undeserved. It's free. And when we connect with Jesus, we have blessings for our lives which will surprise us. And they multiply one right after another. That's what John says, out of his own experience. So we can't earn this relationship, and the law and work failed. But we can, and we can't even pay a monthly fee for the connection. It's free, but we need to connect. A free wireless connection doesn't mean anything to anybody in the universe if you don't somehow do a click or plug in or do something to connect. You can have all the computer programs available in the world. If you don't connect, they don't mean anything to you. Therefore, at the beginning of this new year, it would be good for all of us to consider, am I really connected to Jesus for this new year? And then we can make our own experiences like John did and see if he was right. Was there one blessing right after another? Well, have I received any blessings since I connected to Jesus? We can experience and experiment with a real relationship. That makes a significant difference. So at the beginning of this new year, don't try to get everything correct. Don't try to make yourself be a certain kind of person because you think if you do that, well then you'll be what Jesus wants you to be. If you get things correct, then you're on his page. No, we'll never get it correct. But we can connect. And that kind of connection makes all the difference in the world. I had an interesting experience this week. I don't know how many of you remember Philip Ansah. He was from Ghana. And he was in this church, and maybe he'll even hear me mention this because we communicated via email over the holidays. Philip was here. And it's interesting to me that all of the Ghanaian students that we had then came and connected with us. And I mean, it was like really deep connection. And so now when we occasionally connect, it's a beautiful thing, full of the shared experiences we had, full of love and care and faithfulness that we had with one another, comes through in those moments of now connecting. Do you realize how much fun we'll have when we finally sit down with our Lord and with all those who've gone before us and talk about all the connections that we've had? Well, what a wonderful thing that will be. Connecting is so helpful to all of us in our lives. And therefore, I want to encourage all of you, connect with Jesus. Connect with him deeply, richly, fully in this new year. And you'll find that you'll be blessed. The Lord bless you all as you enter this new year, 2022. Amen.